Earlier this year, Netflix was the target of some controversy when people started accusing them of dumbing down their shows to make for a better second screen experience, or in other words, simplifying them so viewers are able to follow along even when not actually paying attention. That's the exact impression Dungeon Encounters left on me by the time I was done with it. It felt like an overly simplified, shallow activity to put on my second monitor while I was busy paying attention to something else. The entire concept of Dungeon Encounters is based on minimalism. In a market where big publishers often fall into the trap of bigger is better, pumping entirely too much money into lavish, bloated map vomit electatons that need to sell millions of copies in the first month alone to have any hope of breaking even by the end of the fiscal year, Hiroyuki Ito and his small team of Square Enix veterans intentionally built a game where, in their own words, the deliberately streamlined visuals and presentation allows you to focus wholly on the challenging and fun gameplay mechanics. But while this sounds like a fine idea in principle, I'm left wondering if, in their eagerness to cut off the fat, they haven't thrown out most of the meat along with it. When trying to streamline something, you've got to start by finding its defining features. What makes a JRPG a JRPG? Moreover, what makes a JRPG fun and engaging rather than a boring, pointless grindfest? Their answer is plain and simple. It's neither the visuals nor the presentation, not even the characters, storytelling or world building. Instead, it's the gameplay mechanics. True to this belief, the game doesn't spend a lot of time setting you up for adventure. A brief 2-paragraphs introduction is all you get, telling you about a mysterious labyrinth showing up one day and causing havoc in the land. Unable to rely on their lords for help, some citizens decide to band together in the academy and solve the problem with their own hands. You are then unceremoniously dumped into the game world, along with a prompt to build a party of up to 4 characters from a list of 24 candidates. Browsing through this list, you'll find the expected assortment of fantasy humans with weird names: Nangapar, Cespare, Geiselblanc, Ruenzo, Laulagi, Mainazar, Elva. Hold on, that's not a human! Things just become weirder from there. Some guy wearing headphones and a hoodie, a dog holding a sword in his mouth, a robot, a cat, excuse me, Sir Cat, and lastly a freaking dragon. This list is by far the most interesting piece of world building you'll find in the whole game, as every character is accompanied by 3 or 4 paragraphs of background story, small sparks of creativity in an otherwise barren landscape, since there's no dialogue and no character interactions, even between characters who share common origins. Let me give you an example: Joraf and Jufran. Joraf is a dedicated young man who became a wartime merchant to care for his sickly twin brother, until peace brought an end to war's prosperity. Impoverished, he decides to join the academy to find a new purpose in life. In front of the academy gates, he meets a lonely, shaggy dog who seemed to be waiting for someone. When their gazes met, Jorah felt as if it was his own brother's eyes staring back at him from beyond, and starts calling him Jufran, his dead brother's name. Did he really reincarnate as a dog, or is Jorah feeding a delusion to cope with his past failures? How would they fare in the academy? Who would they team up with? How would everyone else react when seeing a dog casting spells and swinging a sword around like a pro? All that interesting potential is wasted, pruned away by Dungeon Encounters' overzealous minimalism. In terms of exploration, every floor is divided into hundreds of little squares with occasional numbers on them. These are events, shops, enemy encounters, and so on. The only break to this stark monotony is the player's party, represented by a 3D model of the party leader. They actually look kinda nice, but as the only objects you ever see on the board, they only drive home how empty the game world feels. Events are also just as dry, there's no story to them, only a line of text, matter of factly telling you found something, be it a healing fountain, treasure, new abilities, or puzzles. Puzzles, by the way, are the highlight of the game for me, as they are the only part that requires me to actually pay attention to what I'm doing. There are only two types: maps, which test you with recognizing the area where a treasure is hidden, a truly challenging affair when there's literally no landmarks anywhere to guide yourself with, and logic puzzles, which give you numeric sequences to decode. These logic puzzles feel a bit disconnected from the game world though, as their solutions hinge on out-of-game context, from famous numeric sequences to references to the most random of real-life events. A generous interpretation might decide those references are actually cleverly disguised environmental storytelling, hinting at the nature of the game world, and that's exactly what I was hoping for when they started showing up, but I'll just go ahead and say that's a bluff. There's nothing interesting beyond those subtle nudges, and that's what disappointed me the most. Once again, there's so much unrealized potential there, and I only lament for the game we would have gotten otherwise. Now, you might be wondering why I am insisting so much on the lack of story and world building when the developers intentionally set them aside to focus on gameplay. Well, when so much of their marketing hinges on evoking nostalgia for the Final Fantasy name, I don't think it's too much to expect anything more than what we got. Even the first Final Fantasy, as simplistic as it might seem compared to modern standards, gave us a plotline to follow from beginning to end and interesting characters who, sure, only had a few lines of dialogue each, and yet gave players a sense of purpose. The Warriors of Light aren't an amorphous group of generic murder hobos. They're chosen heroes who travel the land, slaying monsters, rescuing damsels, liberating towns, and undoing curses, all for the sake of restoring the natural balance of the world's primal forces. In their adventures, they trudge through thick forests, swamps, and deserts, delve into caves and ancient ruins, sail the seas, fly through the clouds, and so much more. Even though both games aren't that different in terms of mechanics, there's a sense of wonder and curiosity at what you might encounter next that Dungeon Encounter's lackluster presentation simply fails to achieve. But alright, let's for the purpose of discussion accept the argument that I had misguided expectations going in, and see how Dungeon Encounter fares in its own terms, which, of course, brings us to the gameplay. There are two main elements to the gameplay: exploration and combat. Exploring a floor is a matter of stepping on every single tile, painting it. The game helpfully tracks explored tiles on a per floor basis, so you can easily see how many you're missing. As you reach exploration milestones, the game awards you ability points, which can be used to activate the abilities you find while interacting with some events. These abilities are vital for progression, ranging from something as simple as being able to see and identify enemy encounters on the map, to passive immunities, healing spells, and traversal abilities. The traversal abilities are particularly useful as they allow you to bypass any floors you want, allowing for quick returns to the surface and, more importantly, delving deeper than your party's gear would normally allow, making for a rather freeform style of exploration. They can be risky, however, as these abilities have limited uses and you can easily end up stranded on a floor full of creatures too strong to fight. The most powerful abilities especially risk scattering your party all over the labyrinth when misused, forcing you to build a new party out of the remaining Academy members to look for them. That's the main purpose of finding more characters, by the way. Your party is always limited to 4 members, but these extra allies act as extra lives for when your main party dies, allowing you to rescue them. The rescue mechanic is very inconvenient though, as even dead party members take up a party slot, forcing you into multiple trips back and forth from the Academy with a smaller than ideal party to rescue everyone. Dungeon Encounter's minimalistic approach is also present in its character stats. There are only 3: HP, PP, and speed. Attack and defenses are entirely dependent on equipment, which costs PP to equip. In short, you are what you wear, and you have the freedom to spread your PP around or focus on a single piece of overpowered equipment should you prefer it. There are no classes or jobs. With the exception of a small number of character-exclusive equipment, anyone can equip anything. Weapons are divided into categories according to 4 different characteristics, whether they deal a random or fixed amount of damage per attack, whether that damage is physical or magical, melee or ranged, and dealt to a single target or the entire enemy party. Meanwhile, armor is a much more straightforward affair. You can either have heavier armors that offer more defense, or lighter armor that sacrifices defense in favor of a speed bonus. Equipment tiers are also pretty simple. Higher tier equipment is much stronger than lower tiers at a much higher cost in terms of both money and PP. Lastly, some endgame weapons have unique powers, such as the ability to inflict status effects on enemies, delay them, etc. They may also be found earlier than normal as a reward for solving puzzles. Combat is the deepest aspect of the game. Whenever you enter a floor, encounters are randomly placed on the map. They start off invisible, but once you equip the Fiend's Elting ability, they start showing up as black numbers on the board. Each number corresponds to a different enemy combination. Number 0 is ghosts, number 1 is ghosts and wild boars, number 2 is ghosts, wild boars and eager mantises, and so on, which are all recorded in the battle log. Combat only initiates whenever the player walks into one of those black numbered squares, meaning you are in full control of who and when you decide to fight. Battles use the ATB system, made famous by Final Fantasy IV through 9, where every character has a small bar that fills up according to their speed and allows them to act when it is full, a deeper and more interesting style of turn-based combat that allows faster characters to act more often than slower ones. It doesn't escape Dungeon Encounter's fixation for minimalism though, as player actions are limited to using one of 2 equipped weapons per character, or one of a handful of active abilities like healing or running away. There are no consumables, no buffs or debuffs, no elemental resistances and weaknesses, or anything else. At most, you've got enemies with a lot of physical defense and very little magical defense, or vice versa. But I never had any problems overpowering them either way, so it's not like it really matters. Which is a shame, as the defense system in Dungeon Encounters works in a very novel manner that has a lot of potential in the right game. Rather than decreasing the amount of damage taken, defense acts as a second HP bar that absorbs all damage until it runs out, meaning even a single point of defense can fully negate thousands of points of damage, making it very difficult to heal enemies before they have a chance to act. This made some encounters particularly tricky, as status effects can be rather brutal. Many enemies can poison, petrify, instantly heal or worse, so many encounters turn into a game of trying to rush down the more dangerous enemies before they can get a chance to act. Failure can be very costly, as recovering from most status effects takes a lot of effort. That retro-inspired brutality would be very enjoyable for me if it wasn't so short-lived. Every status effect can be fully negated by finding and activating its corresponding immunity, which will often be conveniently found just a few floors away from when you first start seeing monsters capable of inflicting it, and even if you don't have it, avoiding encounters with particularly dangerous enemies is a trivial task, as you only have to avoid stepping on their tiles. Funnily enough, the most interesting encounter I had in the whole game is also the one that, going by the Steam reviews, caused many players to give up. Encounter number FC. Dungeon Encounters uses hexadecimal numbering to label events and enemies, and FC is the 4th highest number in the battle log, a clear warning that you should be careful fighting it. I first found him on floor 11 and decided to give it a try, figuring the worst he could do was wipe my party out, so I stepped into that tile and found this guy, the treasure hunter. 70 speed, 10,000 in all stats, and a ult design that has Loot Goblin written all over it. Even though my weapons were really weak compared to his HP, he was alone, so I hoped my magical stopwatch that reset enemy ATB bars would allow me to shut him down long enough to allow me to win, much like my strategy in the Trails in the Sky remake. And it worked for a time. Eventually the stopwatch failed, which was to be expected, to be fair, as it only had a 35% chance of success, and I braced for the damage. Except instead of damaging me, he stole 100 gold from my pockets. 100 gold was easy to replace even this early in the game, which bolstered my confidence in winning the battle. After all, I had just spent most of my money on new equipment anyway, so I thought at worst he would take away the couple thousand gold or so I had left. The battle continued, minus 100, minus 10,000, minus 100 again, and all the while I kept slowly whittling down his health. Minus 500,000. That's a lot, but it didn't matter anyway, since by this point he had already stolen everything I had. Minus 500,000 again. Yeah, please, just keep wasting your moves. After a few turns, my party finally struck him down. Victory was mine, and as a reward, I earned a whole 50,000 gold. Awesome! Except, when I opened the status menu to check my money, I didn't see 50,000 gold staring back at me. Instead, I stared into the abyss, and the abyss was a massive hole in my party's bank account. Negative 956,422 gold. I was nearly a million gold in debt. I had no words. I mean, have you ever seen a medieval fantasy game where you can go in the negatives? That's not how gold is supposed to work. My first instinct was to go back to a previous save, but it wasn't that simple. There's no manual saves in dungeon encounters, and the game auto-saves after every battle, so my only options were to either start a new game or persevere as the owner of this world's worst Reddit score. The thing is, I had all the chances in the world to avoid this fate. I had literally dozens of chances to run away, or hell, I would have simply avoided the encounter altogether. That I was now almost a million gold in debt was my own fault for underestimating all the warning signs given by the game, no matter how clear. I had no one to blame but myself. A lot of people hate that, but this surprise was the most fun I had in my entire playthrough. So many games advertise themselves as respecting player freedom and having consequences for player choice, but most of them limit themselves to changing small, mostly irrelevant story details. Meanwhile, here was Dungeon Encounters awarding me a stupid prize after I played a very stupid game of Whack-A-Mouse, one that would force me to make do with random drops for a couple dozen floors, until I finally managed to pay back my debt. The buzz of having something unexpected happen in the game soon wore off though, and I was left with the monotony of painting maps and fighting monsters again and again and again and again and again and again, until I realized, you know what, I bet I can play this game one-handed. No, not like that, get your mind out of the gutter. You see, I study a little bit of Japanese every day on a software that tests my knowledge by testing me with typing out the readings and meanings of different Japanese words, and I figured, hey, if the game is not holding my attention anyway, I may as well use it for something else. So there I was, left hand on the controller, sending Elva and friends further and further down the dungeon, while my right hand typed out hundreds of Japanese words until I ran out of words to type. Then I moved on to anime. Do you know how much anime you can fit in the length of a JRPG? A lot, it turns out. I caught up with Cyberpunk, Frieren, City the Animation, Silent Witch, Ameto Imito, Rury's Rocks, and Toime Ito Night, all thanks to Dungeon Encounters. That's the most saddening part of it all. You see, Dungeon Encounters isn't a bad game at all. The game mechanics, such as they are, work in a focused and cohesive manner. The character and monster designs are great, the writing, as little of it as there is creative and interesting, and Nobuo Uematsu's soundtrack is on point as always, this time with rock and roll rearrangements of classical music. I never run into any bugs or technical issues, and it even supports a bunch of quality of life features like ultra-wide resolutions, multiple keyboard bindings for every command, speed multipliers for movement and battles, and much more, but none of those features change the fact that the game is just boring. And that's the worst thing a piece of entertainment can omit. You see, even a bad game can still be entertaining in a so bad it's good kind of way, but a boring, unremarkable game, well, it's just a waste of time, and it's sad to see a team that got so many details right just fail to find the fun, as it were. So, there you have it. Dungeon Encounters is perfect if you want a game to play while studying or catching up with video series. Otherwise, you'd do better by playing the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters instead, especially 4, 5 and 6, as they offer a similar gameplay experience with an actual plot to go along with it. I'm sorry this turned out to be such a negative review. It's actually one of the reasons why I took so long to make it, but at the end of the day, that's how I feel about the game, so my options were to either be honest about it or not make a video at all. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as no one is above criticism, feel free to criticize this video as well. Bye bye!